welcome back to Starseed Awakening. I'm talking with Solaris BlueRaven, and she's just been telling us how she was inducted into this program, and I had a couple more questions for her. So, have you had any contact? Have they tried to contact you or anything since this time that you got rid of them?
Right. Well, the bottom line is, as long as I have the anomaly signal embedded in me, they have remote access if they so choose. I do know that when the band toured this past year and they were here in town, that there was an access, and they did access and communicate. Michael did. And I was well aware that that was them live feed real time. And so far as I can tell, when they come in and communicate versus a mock radio communication system, something that's not natural. I also know his mannerism and communication very, very clearly. I will say that they probably come in once in a while to poke their heads in, but it's a taunting too, because it's something that they know that everything's already said and done in the illusion of. So I think they pretty much figured they won. But I will say that, yes, they can access, and they have in the past. And also things have changed significantly after July, after this summer, where I've noticed that we've had more of it seems like a different kind of an array system has been deployed on a global scale. And it seems to me like a lot of interference gets run now. I've been put kind of on a mark insofar as I think I have a bigger target on a different level now, which is not in the highest good for me probably. But that's just my own impression.
Right. And what was the thing he said to you?
Oh, he said, I'm over your head. I'm in your head. I'm not in your head. He said he was over my head. In other words, they were over, like what I call like a flyby communication, live feed real time. And they said something sarcastic, and I couldn't even remember it now, but I knew it was him. But I can tell when they access and when they communicate live feed real time. These are the people that created the signal. So regardless of what people were connected with them and what covert intelligence agency are associated with them, the initiators of the assault was Michael, Neil, Getty, and Alex. And then it was developed and enhanced, and I will say that I was more like tested, like a test pilot, and accessed by just so people could run tests on me to be programmed. I do know that a lot of the artificial intelligence programming and the templates that they've created have a lot to do with where I was and what I was doing back in 2004 with the remote viewing, artificial telepathy, and everything else that they were incorporating into me on the timeline.
Right.
A lot of breakthroughs. I mean, we had phenomenal breakthroughs back then. I must say, that technology, when you're not being abused with it, is phenomenal. It really is. But when you're getting harassed and they're trying to create altars or they're trying to break you down, that's not good.
No. So they would have found some way to do it besides torturing people. The end result might have been something that could have turned out to be good.
Right. Well, I was willing to communicate with Michael and listen to them. But at the same time, when they were trying to control, manipulate me and create altars, they didn't allow me to execute my free will. They didn't want me meditating. They didn't want me doing affirmations. They were trying to take away everything I loved and empowered me. And I realized that this was about mind control, that they were trying to control, manipulate, and destroy me. I really got that after a while, that these people are not my friends or my allies. And especially after what Michael did to me in the courtroom, as much as I trusted him, I mean, he was a handler. Of course you're going to trust your handler, right? That's the program. Right. But literally, I realized very clearly, I was like, wow, this guy is a betrayer. This guy is not looking out for me. That's the bottom line.
Right. So they tried to create an altar. Tell us about that.
Well, what's really interesting is they kept challenging me in my name. They said, you're not this, and this is your name, and this is your name. And eventually they started saying that my name was Selena Taylor and I was born April 22nd. Now, I mentioned this a few times, not very often, because I really didn't know how to digest it. But when they kept insisting that I was Selena Taylor, and anybody who does the research, Selena Taylor is Neil Peart's pseudo-whatever daughter who was killed. And let me explain to you, Selena Taylor was plugged into that program of the AI because I know very clearly, oh, that's interesting. Neil used to call Selena Taylor his not-so-human child quite often.
His what?
This is not-so-human child.
Oh, okay.
So this kid in the illusion of interconnected with the artificial telepathy live feed. It was the same kind of concept, same technology they used on her, they used on me. So when they were trying to induct me and brainwash me into that, I thought it was really strange that they would even insist that my name was that, and how foolish and how childish I was thinking. And then later on, after I assessed everything with mind control and how they create altars, I'm thinking, well, obviously they were trying to take a brain template of some kind of a heterodyne technology and insert it and interweave it into my celestial design or my neural circuits to some degree, because it wasn't about extracting unless he thought I had some information on her. Because you have to remember, Miesha, back in the 80s and the 90s, I had communication with him in the past. And she was alive then. She died after I broke orbit with Neil in the 90s. So think about it. When I stopped communicating with him, all sorts of bad stuff started happening to him. which I thought was really interesting. And then I went like into really hardcore spiritual enlightenment and healing work, and my whole life changed for the better.
Uh-huh.
So I thought that was interesting.
That is interesting. That is interesting. So, do you feel that, let's see, I've got some questions here. Do you, this is Mary on my Facebook group, wants to know what, do you think you're going to be accessed? Do you think there's a possibility you could be accessed, and in way, and how could that happen?
Well, if they access me, it's through the communication system insofar as my anomaly signal. I know it's encrypted, but there are certain people who can access it and break the encryption and communicate. But I will also say that I'm pretty solid in my personality right now. I'm very, very solid, which means I've gotten through everything and I'm not putting up with anything. So if anything does try to take me over, I'm not going to allow it. So I'm pretty much right now at the helm. So nothing else gets intruded. I will say that I think they've realized that I can't be programmable at this point,
Right.
at least anymore. So to a point where I'm actually in charge and in control. So it's kind of a negate. They just negate the technology to some degree. But I will say they have used it to kind of harass me and attack I think I mentioned to you I was going through some kind of remote attack a couple months ago.
Mm-hmm.
And it was obvious to me they were trying to do damage to me. So that's a different division, by the way. That's a different group of people who have access to the information and technology. And I think it's a spin-off and connection to the band. I don't think it's them personally. I think it's another division that's worse than them. And that's what has me concerned.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. So, yeah, they've stepped away and all of that.
Right. Well, they stepped away
the
afterwards.
The connection is still there with
they're the
whoever
initiators.
was their handler, whoever was the one they were in control.
Right. And even after a while, Michael said, I can't help you anymore, which was really interesting. And what's funny is when they first came to me, Live Feed Real Time, I don't know if I mentioned this to you earlier, but he said, I have voices in my head. Can you help me? That was the first thing they said to me.
Whoa.
And I said, yeah. And then I said, well, have you tried a clearing of entities? And he goes, no. But this is what's interesting. The whole idea behind it was accessing, opening up a communication system, Live Feed Real Time. And there were other things that were said with the band Live Feed too. But it's kind of interesting because I try not to relate too much of it because I don't want copycats, saying something similar. So that way I'll know.
Right.
But I do have the information, and a lot of it's documented in my book, I the Remote.
Right. Well, you know that, of course, here in Area 51, and I'm sure everywhere, there's some changes been made here at Area 51 that it's now CIA ran.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking during the break with Tina Marie about some things, and we heard, there's this the cyborg program.
Right.
What can you tell about that?
It sounds like transhumanism to me. What was interesting is that the CIA pushing out the military and the illusion of is very concerning to me because CIA they're the masters of mind control, and they will stop at nothing to screw with people's brainwaves, manipulate, control, and create them as assets or put them on a self-destruct sequence. We all know that's dangerous to have the CIA involved in Area 51. It's very dangerous, Miesha.
Very dangerous.
I don't like it at all. And I'll tell you another thing. I guess I could share it with you on air, but remember when I told you this was maybe less than a year ago, about the general, and he was saying goodbye?
Yes.
Well, that's a confirmation because the military was leaving.
Sure.
Yep.
Oh, yes. Yes, it is.
So there were some good people. I want to make very clearly that the people, the band inducted me into the band with these programs, but there were some people in the military, in the covert military, that I know were really, really good people that were watching out for me, even though I was going through some really bad stuff. So I do want to acknowledge that. That there were some good people there. I haven't forgotten those people. But I will say that there are other divisions and there are other things at play here, which deals with control and manipulation. And after a while, as you know, Miesha, we become assets. Even if I broke through all the technology and I was able to decode it, and I'm able to express it and communicate things that Pert couldn't do. I mean, he almost used me as to educate people about what's been going on all these years. It's kind of strange, but that's what I feel like. I feel like, they almost programmed me in a weird way because they knew I was determined enough to break this technology down and expose it, that they knew that I was going to do this. They knew I was going to go live on air. They knew that I was so fortified that I was going to come out and tell the truth, and they couldn't control it. So maybe this is what they wanted all along. I don't know anymore. I really don't, but I'm kind of beginning to think that. So.
Well, they didn't know who they were dealing with.
No, they didn't. And the thing is, I'm so fortified. When you're 40 years old, which is when they hit me with the technology, you're an adult. You're not a child. It's not like I was a 5-year-old that they can program. If they had a child with this technology, forget it. The kid's toast. I'll tell you right now, if your children are starting to be inducted at small ages, forget it. It's going to be horrific for them to get deprogrammed. It really is.
Yes, it is. And I just wanted to invite people to join the conversation. We're taking questions on chat or Twitter. You can call in 702-425-9230. I do have a question from somebody in the group as well. That they don't want to say their name, but they were concerned about how much control that these people who have them, are they going to be stuck with them their whole life? Do they what you put?
Is
Do
it
they have
permanent?
any hope of getting away from them? Is what she said.
I would say that you're either going to become one of them as an asset to them, or you're going to be like me and be a kind of a big mouth and just stand up and be counted and say this is a misuse of technology. I will say that once you get pulled into these programs, unfortunately, they create a nice big fat file for you. And some of them are classified materials where they won't show everybody what you've been exposed to. Sometimes they'll create a false a file on your behalf, which has nothing but BS in it to cover up anything that could look possibly credible or experimental. So that's going to happen too.
Okay, now Brenda from Arizona, how can you tell if your kids are part of this program? Are there signs we should be looking for?
Well, I would say that the biggest thing is to watch their behavior. If they have behavioral shifts, I mean, all kids have behavioral shifts to some degree, but you'll notice if they feel like they're being communicated with. We do have natural starseeds who do have like contacting experiences, but with this, it's an artificial telepathy communication system. If they're starting to talk about something in their room or some kind of shadow man in the illusion of something that's visiting them, something that's in communication with them, that's kind of a sign right there that they're being watched or inducted to some degree, whether it's extraterrestrial or covert. So that's something. Watch their eyes. If their eyes look like typewriters where they're going back and forth, left to right when you're talking to them, they are being programmed. That's another thing. Also, the signal anomalies, if they're tagged with a communication system, it can be measured. Steve Colburn is one who can measure this technology. There are certain systems that you can use that can measure brainwave activity and can actually create and see the second signature that's not schizophrenic brainwaves, but actually the AI. So those are things you can look at. But this, once again, it takes you rolling up your sleeves and diving into it. But those are the telltale signs.
Okay. So what you're seeing in their eyes is they're being talked to while you're talking
Right.
to them, and the other ones are talking to them. So then if they say, I have this friend that talks to me in my head,
Well,
that
there's
might be a sign.
there's natural telepathy, and this is what's really kind of concerning because we all know it's imaginary friends at childhood, right? And some of those people with imaginary friends are actually real psychics or have
Right.
contacting experiences. But what these
Right.
guys do is piggyback off of it. So you're dealing with somebody who's weaponizing the spiritual world. And it can take on a lot of different forms. So at that point, you have to kind of go down a list and ask questions. What is it saying? How is it communicating? What does it want? If it's hearing a constant barrage of dialogue where it's trying to manipulate its body, or it's trying to manipulate its hand movements, or it's trying to insert a brain template to a point where another identification, like another name, that's concerning. So yeah, you want to keep track on things like that, and also check out your family. Are they high profile in some way? Are they connected to military, government, alphabet agencies? That's all part of it too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, Larry from California, do you think that certain species of aliens are working with our government on this project? And was the technology given to our government from these beings?
I've been asked that a lot, and I'll tell you point blank. I know people might disagree, but I know that they've reverse engineered technology that never belonged to them, which means that they're running rogue in the underground. A lot of people say, well, they have contracts with ETs. I'm not buying it. They have reverse engineered technology that they've been using and deploying at a mass mind control level. We inherited the best of the best mind control scientists, after the war with the
Mm-hmm.
Germans. Y'all know that. So
Mm-hmm.
literally, they take this technology, they reverse engineer a lot of these ancient artifacts and things that are associated with alien technology, and they create their version of it. Just like the hybrid program, that's a version of an extraterrestrial. It's a modification program designed with artificial intelligence to a point where it changes the person to such a degree it can appear extraterrestrial. And that's the biggest thing. You have to look at these things because when I swear to you, coming from where I've been, I mean, I'm like a hybrid, but I'm also a starseed. So what they did to me was try to modify me through the AI communication system to some degree. So I can say that. I mean, I'm
Mm-hmm.
very clear that I can identify people who've been plugged into these programs. So that's their new species they're looking at.
Okay, so then, being that there's a hybrid program for the ETs, off-worlders, and then there's also their hybrid program. Is
Well,
that
I think
is
we're
that what you're
naturally
saying?
hybrids. The bottom line is
Mm-hmm.
starseeds are natural hybrids. You are a
Right.
natural hybrid. your DNA is naturally alien, extraterrestrial, however you want to decide to call it. You are naturally like that. It's activated through frequency. They call it DNA activation. That's a natural thing. What they're doing is manipulating through brainwave activity. They're trying to get and acquire the MyLabs or the contactees into MyLabs so they can extract data, insert programming so they can extract more, maybe possible information on off-world species. So I would say everything that's in the underground right now is reverse engineered craft, reverse engineered technology, and reverse engineered hybridization, which is not legitimate alien, in my opinion. Okay. And I know people might disagree, but I don't see any advanced species contracting on that level to work with these illiterate people who are here to control, manipulate, and deceive the masses. I'm sorry. That's not the way the cosmos works. And me, as a multidimensional being, I can tell you the universe is really easy. It's blissful. It's consciousness-oriented. It's not about control and manipulation. It's not about switching off DNA, even though you'll hear a lot of different stories out there. But it's been my experience that the only boogeymen were these guys who are actually real people who think they're gods by transhumanism.
Mm-hmm. Well, I do know, in my experience, that part of the reasons they take MyLabs is because we can psychically communicate with the ETs. We communicate with them. We hear what they're saying to us, whereas in somebody in the underground base, they don't hear it.
Yeah,
they don't have that.
That's very true, and that's another thing that I was just mentioning that the other night. I was talking about my Merkaba signal being very ramped up before my induction in 2004, which is light body into Merkaba. It generates a universal heartbeat and pulse signal. It's very, very powerful, and that's what allows me to access multiple world realities, but also transmission and communication with off-world species, right? That's the signal they hijacked and interconnected on their AI. So they were very interested in that signal, and that's something that Walt mentioned to me, is that put me on the radar alone, that signal, to them. So they can measure that. That's something they can measure remotely. When they see that signal and they can measure the signal, they say, well, something's unique about her. She's not like everybody else. She has that starseed Merkaba signal set up, and it's already activated, so we want to take that, tag it, interconnect it on the communication system, and then communicate with her telepathically. So artificial telepathy-wise.
So there's definitely a connection for their interest in starseeds and ET experiencers. They're very, very interested in that.
Oh, yeah, they go hand in hand. Yep,
they do, and that's what I found out in back in the 80s and 90s, that there was this unbelievable connection, and that factions of our government were very interested in the whole phenomena about ET contact. And that's why they started the MyLabs and taking people after the experiences. And the things and the questions that they would ask would be, they were all about the ETs. They wanted to know everything about it.
Right.
And in fact, at one point I had, I guess it was an ET, maybe not. Maybe it was not an off-worlder. It was probably one of theirs, but he was a reptilian, and he did some kind of a mind melt, I guess you'd call. He was trying to read my mind, but they had to have me take some kind of a liquid drug, I guess it was, before they could even start that with him, which tells me right then he's not an off-worlder, because he had to have some kind of synthetic help in order to do this, and it didn't work, by the way, because he was trying to find out where the ship was that with the groups of, and these were also reptilians, but the groups of the reptilians that were positive from off-world were, and that's what they were asking me.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so they do that. So, what would you tell everyone? What do you think is going to happen? What is your message to everyone about what we can do with this? And
well, I'd say educate yourselves. Really be educated insofar as what synthetic telepathy is, what these covert technologies are, what they entail, and how they're being deployed. It's easy to get swept away by mainstream and pretend that these things don't exist, but they truly do. And I'm sure with X-Files coming up on Sunday, you're going to start seeing stories that are probably correlating with a lot of our own real events that Chris Carter likes to adopt. So once again, you're looking at things like this, but educate yourselves, and also stay fortified in your power and your multidimensional design is what I'll tell you, because don't let things take you over, whether it's an entity or artificial intelligence program. Don't let these people control and manipulate you, because it's usually to their advantage and not yours. It's about control, manipulation, self-destruct, isolating you, controlling you, and for what I've experienced, destroying your life. So that's my suggestion, is kind of stay positive on the multidimensional scale, and don't let these people pull you into their gutter of mind control.
By keeping yourself centered, qigong
Hmm.
and I do qigong. That's what I do, and it helps me a lot. What are some of the methods that you use that would help these people that are being targeted? Would you say again?
Well, for me, it's martial arts, it's affirmations, it's just being grounded, but also spiritual, being grounded in multidimensional states of consciousness, which means don't be swayed by the linear world. It's all a hologram. It's all in flux. It's all made of deception. So stay higher on the multidimensional levels, and then also learn to assess things. Just look at it for what it is. Technology feeds. Even if you get visuals, stay grounded in consciousness where you're not being controlled and manipulated by anything you see, anything you hear, anything that's being said to you. Be your own inner voice and listen to that voice, your higher self, connected to source.
Hmm. And how do you stay grounded?
I stay grounded with my martial arts, meditation, exercise training. There's so many things. And I'm actually pretty naturally grounded for
Hmm.
whatever reason. I think that's my black belt. I really do, because I can take a lot of weird energies and still stabilize, especially now. Although when I was first traumatized with the technology in 2004, it was a little bit different because that was something I'd never experienced before.
Right. Well, I'm fortunate because I am a first generational MK Ultra, and so I've come out the other side, and I am sane and happy and grounded.
Yep.
Uh, and I really attest to qigong doing that for me. Meditation, all of these things really help. Um, and I'd like to invite everyone again to come to our MK Ultra DID My Lab Monarch group. It's every Thursday. Just watch on the MK Ultra. You can also join the group, and of course, when you come to the private group, I'd send you a link from the event site, so you can just go to the events and where it's posted, and then join it and come and join Solaris and I, because you'll get some very wonderful help from Solaris and the information that she gives. She's just helped some tremendous amount in the group, and I can't tell you how much I love you and thank you for coming and helping me in the group. You've made such a difference.
Well, it's my pleasure, and thank you for having me on the show. By the way, it's been fabulous and a professional station. I very much appreciate it.
Yes, thank you, love having you. And she's going to be my co-host next week, when I'm going to be having Fritz Springmeyer back, and of course he's with the all of the MK Ultra and everything. So we're going to be talking about the MK Ultra and the old, first generational, and everything else. And so, thank you, everybody. Thank you for coming to Starseed Awakening. And then this is Miesha Johnston signing off for another week. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Starseed Awakening with Miesha Johnston.
A new kind of show.
Live every Saturday at 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network out of Las Vegas, Nevada.
We're pushing the ultimate frontier here.
For more information on Miesha Johnston and the Starseed Awakening radio show,
all right, listen up, everybody. Listen up, please.
visit
www.starseedawakening.org.
Until next week, remember, we're all visitors to this time and place. We're just passing through. Our purpose here is to observe, learn, grow, love, and then we return home.
This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio Network, broadcasting from a shack just south of Area 51.
Wait, that doesn't exist.
This is the KCOR Digital Radio Network.